Obviously, some mixed emotions about having the ceremony today. It would have been much better, of course, to have it a couple of years ago when Cliff was named the Regents Professor. But then COVID-19 came along, and I think we've all been in isolation for 18 or 20 months, and we haven't really had a chance to celebrate what a wonderful achievement this Regents Professorship was. I appreciate all of the friends of Cliff and family that have come, and the members of the Department of Statistics. I know that a lot of people are out of town or traveling, but it was nice to see so many people show up today. And hopefully, towards the end of the ceremony, people can share some memories of their time with Cliff. I came to the department in 2012, and so I overlapped with Cliff for about 7 years. And it was a pleasure knowing Cliff. He's, I think as all the people in the department know, he was an outstanding statistician. He made many contributions to statistics. And beyond statistics, he was really, I think, just a good citizen and a good person. He contributed to society, helped many students. He was on many commissions. He was instrumental in a number of ways. And I thought that I would actually write some of those ways down. So, and I like to go through this list. I don't mean it to be just a list, but I think for many academic statisticians, I think we go through our careers and we work in our office and we publish papers, and we think that that's all there is to being a professional statistician or an academic. And I think many people don't realize that Cliff did a lot of things outside the office. He applied statistics in some very important ways, and so I thought it would just be worthwhile going through some of this. So Cliff joined the Department of Statistics in 1987. He was a senior research scientist at Texas A&M Transportation Institute. Do we have anyone? Yes. So he was in many places besides the Department of Statistics, and he was named a University Distinguished Professor in 2009. He was a Fellow of the American Statistical Association, Fellow of the Institute of Mathematical Statistics, a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He twice won the ASA, American Statistical Association's Award for Chemistry. He was the 2007 winner of the Jerome Sachs Award for Outstanding Cross-Disciplinary Research. And these are very prestigious awards that we would get many of these things within statistics. But I think going outside of statistics, I think you start to see that Cliff really had an impact outside of the narrow confines of our ivory tower. So he was founder and editor of Chemometrics and Intelligence Laboratory Systems, a very important cross-disciplinary journal that's had a major impact. He was an expert in statistics forensics. So in that realm, I think he was largely responsible or partially responsible for people being released from prison. So he was involved in lead bullet analysis. He was part of the FBI's effort, or he convinced the FBI that evidence that people were using from looking at the composition of bullets found at crime scene. I guess the idea was that they would get a bullet at a crime scene, they would get the elements in the bullet, they would go to somebody's house, find some other bullets of the same caliber, and say that that bullet came from the same box of bullets. And it turns out that that was largely nonsense. And the FBI gave up using lead bullet analysis largely because of some things that Cliff did, and I think there were people that were exonerated as a result of that. Along similar lines, he, I think, was instrumental in showing that bite mark analysis was not really a convincing way to convict someone of a crime. So the idea there was, I guess, if a murderer or assailant bit somebody's arm, the police could take a picture of their arm and they could say that they were like dental records or something that they could then match it to a suspect, even though the arm or whatever really deforms a lot. And again, this was just sort of nonsense, but there were people in prison because of this, and I think Cliff worked with a group to sort of prove that you can't do this and that this wasn't a valid way of convicting someone of a crime. He had a very famous paper. I think many of you know about the analysis of the lead bullet fragments from the John F. Kennedy assassination. And I think he challenged some of the findings of the Warren Commission on that assassination. Many of you know, I think, the problems that we have with forensics and police often influencing the way analysis of forensic evidence is handled and maybe convicting people of crimes they didn't commit. This came to a head in Houston. The Houston City Police Force, their crime lab was working too closely with the Houston City Police. They were maybe, I don't know the details, I don't want to say tampering with evidence, but influencing the way evidence was interpreted. And that led really to a major reorganization of that crime lab, and Cliff was brought in as the chief statistics advisor for reorganizing the crime lab in Houston. And so that's impacted criminal justice in the fourth largest city in the United States. I could go on and on with the papers that he's published and the impact he's had on the field, but I think Ronnie has some quotes for some other people. But I would also like to just say that Cliff was also the official statistician of the Texas Holocaust and Genocide Commission, which is, I think, if you look about what's going on in politics today, I think maybe this is important that we make sure that we remember past events and that people are aware of things that have occurred in the past. And he designed or helped design the Texas Educator Survey to make sure that people were aware of what had happened during the Holocaust. And facts are facts, and we need to remember facts, and we need to remember things that have happened in history so that they don't happen again. So anyway, I would really feel honored to have known Cliff and to work with him. I think he was an outstanding statistician, but I think in terms of just being a citizen of our country and a servant to the people in this community and other communities, I think he was just an outstanding person. So we miss Cliff, and we have his Regents Professor Award here. I guess perhaps, Ronnie, you're going to have a picture taken with Kathy maybe in a few minutes, but I'll let you say a few words first.
Thank you, Val. I will have a few words that may overlap with your words, well, but these are good overlaps because these are really good records. So a few words about Cliff Moore, about his achievements. A native of Long Island, Spiegelman earned a bachelor's in economics, math, statistics at the State University of New York at Buffalo in 1970, and both his master's in managerial economics and doctorate in statistics and applied mathematics at Northwestern in 1973 and 1976 respectively. Prior to coming to Texas A&M, he spent 9 years in the Statistics Engineering Division of the National Bureau of Standards, the present-day National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, in Gaithersburg from 1978 to 1987, following 1 year as an assistant professor of statistics at Florida State University from 1976 to 1977. He also held visiting faculty appointments at Northwestern, Johns Hopkins, and Lamar University. In addition to higher education, Spiegelman served as an adjunct investigator in biostatistics branch of National Cancer Institute, NCI, Division of Cancer Epidemiology Genetics, from 2005 to 2008, and as a consultant for the NCI Proteomics program from 2005 to 2009. For the past 6 years, he spent his summers in Washington, D.C., working with collaborators at the National Agricultural Statistics Service between 2014 and 2019. Spiegelman was founder of the field of chemometrics, the science of using data to extract information from clinical systems by data-driven means to investigate and address problems in chemistry, biochemistry, and chemical engineering. In 2017, the international journal he founded, Chemometrics and Intelligent Laboratory Systems, celebrated his 30-plus years of service to both the publication and to the discipline he helped create. Beyond traditional scholarly achievements, Spiegelman was equally driven by societal service, as evidenced by his body of work focused on problems of local, state, national, and international importance, along with his desire to communicate the results to help audiences at all levels better understand its broader significance. During past 2 decades, he was quoted in many contexts by national media, most notably with regard to his research showing the statistical limitations of some of the forensic techniques commonly presented as evidence in the justice system as well said, including bullet fragment analysis. He routinely testified in criminal matters related to various aspects of statistics, flawed forensic science, probability, and the law, often in association with the Innocence Project, the national non-profit legal clinic dedicated to exonerating wrongfully convicted people through DNA testing and other post-verdict methods. I have several people who did not, who could not attend. They asked me to read their takes and their words about Cliff. The first one is from John Newton, and the email was titled John Newton Honoring Cliff Spiegelman. It was my great honor to have known and worked with Regents and distinguished Professor Cliff Spiegelman from 1987 to his untimely death last year, first as his colleague, then his department head and dean. Cliff was a remarkably complicated scientist in person, and he and I had many very useful conversations over the years, as he never was shy to tell me when I was less than astute about some issue. He was a man of great passion, and his Regents professorship was a tribute to that passion. To be Regents professor, one needs to start with being outstanding professor, but then much more is added to the criteria, in particular contributing to the interdisciplinary projects, such as his work in adding important statistical methodology in chemistry, but also making a difference in society at large. The best example of his work is in forensic, particularly as a voice that the Innocence Project could call upon. Cliff was a force for truth and righteousness, and he is missed. The second email that I got was from Sam Oman from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He said, Brani, I would appreciate if you could read the following at Cliff's memorial ceremony. I was really saddened to hear that Cliff had passed away. I started working in the field of calibration in the early 80s, motivated by a consulting problem, and had to teach myself. Cliff articles helped me considerably. Frequently, I communicated with him, sometimes via old-fashioned lectures, sometimes via email. When I had complicated questions, he always responded, and his detailed comments, questions, and suggestions were extremely helpful. The last such email I have is from 2012. We never did any joint work together, in part because I live quite far away in Jerusalem. But we did meet and hang at various conferences in the US and abroad. And he actually visited me both at the Hebrew University and at my apartment when he was here in Jerusalem in 2017. In addition to being very smart, he was really a nice person, and I will miss him. The last one is from Ray Carroll, and he could not be here. Ray says, Cliff and I arrived in 1987 in College Station. We needed someone like him someone like him with extremely high research standards and national visibility, both of which he had, who could grow with the department at Texas A&M to be transitioned into a great research university. Also, at the time, the field of statistics was changing from a purely mathematical area to what is now highly data-centric, computational, and filled with practical applications of social interest. Cliff was the person I thought we could recruit, who I knew would really adapt, and turned out that this was absolutely correct. As expected, Cliff went from an associate professor to a distinguished professor and a Regents professor. He was an elected fellow of every major statistical association. His work on forensic with the Innocence Project were extraordinarily important and very visible for Texas A&M. He also worked with and influenced the Texas Holocaust Commission. His work on forensic, where he analyzed very deeply things like bullet fragments, has made our legal system more just. On his later years, Cliff became a superb member of students and junior faculty, mentor of students and junior faculty, and never made this known. For someone with such a career, he was extraordinarily modest. I only found out in the last year that many of our junior faculty members and postdocs, especially women, thought of Cliff as a real supporter and a great advisor. We at the Department of Statistics will miss Cliff. Society and Texas A&M University will as well. So this is all I have that then allow me to present this medal. Yeah, we cut it. So this is something that we are. Abby, would you take care of all this? Now I know that here there are many friends and colleagues of Cliff, and I am going to invite for you to share your memories about him. I know, for example, that Mike mentioned that he will say something.
Well, I've probably known Cliff longer than anyone, since I knew Cliff all the way back in 1976, when we were both together on the faculty at Florida State. And Cliff was very much a mathematical statistician back in those days. But then when he went to the National Bureau of Standards, that's what it was called back then, he became much more as the interface between applications and theory, and kept evolving along the ways. And when he joined us in '87, he had really had very little teaching experience, and came to me for advice on teaching and developed into an excellent teacher. I think if you went and talked to his students, they would express to you the concern he showed in making sure that they were learning in the class and getting the most out of his class also. So I think that wasn't mentioned, his excellent teaching also. But he was a great colleague. He'd drop by and we'd chat about the Innocent Project and also about his animals on the farm, which Kathy can relate to. But just a really wonderful colleague and a good human being. So he'll be greatly missed by both our department and I think greater society also.
Thanks, Mike.
Kathy asked me if I'd say a few words.
Yes.
So, I'm not part of your department, though I think I drove your department crazier than any student you ever had. My name's Peter Tarlow. I was Cliff's rabbi. And in that sense, we had lunch together on a continual basis. So I would hear everything from a very different perspective. But just to give you some of the ideas about who Cliff was, when the governor appointed me the chairman of the Holocaust Commission, I realized we were a statistical mess. And I called Cliff and I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, do you need me as your official statistician? And I said, absolutely. And I said, but let me make it clear, in state government, not only don't you get paid, it'll probably cost you something. He made that absolutely clear. I studied stat here, and it was a challenge for the department. I was determined to get an A in 652. Ruth, who was the secretary, arranged for me to meet with a different professor after every class. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I had stat at 8 o'clock, and I was up here at 9 o'clock and getting to know the professors. But in the end, Cliff kind of became my tutor, and I was thinking, and I was very slow. I did get an A, but I was very slow. And I said to Cliff, you're teaching me stat, I'm teaching you patience. If you can teach me, you can teach anyone. And that's exactly what he did. He was very proud of all the various things that he did. One of the things that was not mentioned, 10 scholars were picked between the Weizmann Institute in Israel, which is probably the leading academic research institute in the world, in Texas A&M. And Cliff was one of those. And he was paired up with someone at the Weizmann Institute, and they were given the money to do whatever they needed to do. In other words, they did not have an agenda. They were able to just explore things. And again, I think that really speaks a lot about Cliff and the type of creativity that he did. I will tell you that when we went to, Cliff did everything by the book. It's a statistical book. So I said, where should we go to eat? He had figured out a statistical formula of which restaurants we should go at what time. I said, okay, you got it. So I really am going to miss him. I do miss him. And actually, what I wanted to do, but I can't, is call him tonight and tell him all about this event. Because that's what kind of our relationship was. So I really want to thank you all. I know that from his family's name, but also in Cliff's name, thank you for having this. Because I know Cliff is looking down upon you right now, and he's very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I knew Cliff for almost 28 years, and Cliff was my PhD advisor. I was his second student, and he has been, not just as my advisor, but he has been a wonderful mentor, colleague, and friends. We wrote many papers together, as well as a transportation statistics textbook. And as you already indicated, Cliff was a pioneer in many areas, and he was also a giant. But most importantly, he was modest and humble, and always ready to help somebody who needed his help. And I miss all of his words of wisdom. Miss many of those lunches, and also his vision and insight, and also his intuition. And as you just said, I think that Cliff would be really happy just looking down, from above. And I really appreciate, all of this time. And I know that we are going to miss him very, very long time. And no one will replace Cliff. But yeah, it's a great memory.
Yep. Sujin? Yes.
Hi, so I probably don't know Cliff as much as everyone else. I only have known him for 5 years. But to follow up a little bit on the letter that Raymond Carroll wrote, I think part of what he wrote is because of what I shared. Cliff was not on my official mentoring committee. He was not in my research area. And I met him for the first time during my interview, where the first thing I noticed in his office was a bowl of candy. And I was like, ooh, can I take one? Yes, please. We have not talked about my research during my interview at all. We talked about candy. We talked about the weather. I was worried about my flight back to upstate New York. He offered to call United right then on my behalf, let him know if he needs to change the flight. He's like, they would answer to me. They would not answer to you. And he was just incredibly kind and incredibly humble. I remember the first time I visited after the interview, we were looking for the house, and I ran into him in the elevator, and I was saying we were looking to live in Bryan, and he's like, call me. I was like, okay. So I called him, and we had like a 40-minute talk where he told me about the farm and the Bryan area and how his girls grew up having a very diverse set of friends that will always visit his house. And it's just been incredible that he extended all this kindness to me without knowing me or knowing anything about me. Throughout the years, when I had my annual report, he once came to my office with his annual report, which is pretty impressive. And he just sat down and he will work line by line, like, you put it like this, you put it like this, you don't put this, you put it like this. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I have a friend who's also a statistician at another university. He had been in SAMSU for a year at the forensic program, overlapped with Cliff. Only positive things to tell about Cliff, another junior statistician. I mentioned the name to Cliff, and Cliff obviously had many, many different collaborators. And he was like, oh yes, he's doing great, how he is. It was so wonderful to work with him. And just throughout the years, I'm sure there are other things that I forget, but the kindness that he expressed to junior people, both females and males, my postdoc, it will never be forgotten. So I just wanted everyone to know that he was great.
Thanks, Irina. Sujin has a couple words.
Yes, I say a couple of words. Cliff was a great colleague, great mentor, and a great friend. When I just came here in 1990, Cliff was one of the first colleagues who approached me and to advise me, to take care of me, to be a informal mentor for me. Because during that time we didn't have this more formal mentor system, as Irina said. So since then we actually worked together, and we had lunches together at this Chulaski. He likes the Chulaskis. Went there almost every time, and he gave me a lot of different advices, from academics to American life, and to family, kids. We share a lot of different things. And one thing he advised me was not to be a theory boy too much. So that really helped me, benefited me so much. So I remember what he said, and I really branched out to do a lot of more methodological and more applied statistical work with a lot of different people on campus and beyond. So I really benefited from his advice a lot, and he's such a smart guy. He was really intelligent and also very kind. At the personal level, and he and Kathy, have a daughter, first daughter, Lindsay, and my daughter Diana, born at the same age. So we really shared a lot of educational information in how to raise kids, things like that. And we, our families also know each other very well. And of course, Abby was a little younger, so we missed that a little bit, But Caliph always talk about you guys, and he we always talk about kids from elementary school to really to college, even to graduate school. So we really share a lot of such life at the personal level as well. So Caliph was really a very great guy, and we really miss him very much. And Sue wanted to say hello to you guys, my wife Sue.
Thanks, Sujin. Do we have more memories by colleagues? Jeff?
I don't really have much to add as far as Cliff's, being an outstanding statistician and scientist. Clearly he was that. But one thing I wanted to add is just how much he enjoyed being a statistician. I mean, in my 40 plus years in statistics, I don't think I ever knew anybody who enjoyed it as much as he did. The few times I would come up here on the weekend to work, I mean, I would see Cliff up here like on a Saturday morning working. But one thing he said that stuck with me was that he described, how he felt about working, and he said that when he went into the office and was thinking about a new problem, he said, I felt like a kid in a candy store.
Don?
Most of us knew Cliff as a great researcher, very distinguished statistician. When we started the new undergraduate program about 5 years ago, we had a course in experimental design that we needed somebody to teach. And Cliff took it over, and essentially, he made those undergraduates understand the importance of good statistical design. He was really a proselytizer of statistical methodology, and I think he really added a lot to our program. And so that was just another way that his personality exhibited itself.
Excellent. I know that Elaine has something to say.
Well, I've known Dr. Spiegelman my whole 28 plus years being here. I remember that back in, I believe it was 20, I don't remember exactly what it was, but my family had suffered a double death. My uncle and my cousin were killed in a car accident, and it's, you know, it's kind of customary for the department to kind of rally together when one of us hurts. You know, we all hurt. So Dr. Spiegelman was raising turkey that week, and he gave me the biggest turkey I've ever seen, and wanted me to give it to my aunt so that she could prepare one last Thanksgiving meal for her family. And it was just, you know, a token of the generosity that he shared. You could just always tell he was thinking about his next great ideas when he would walk up and down the halls, and almost like pacing, but not quite. He just, you know, take steps and retrace the steps, and he's just always thinking. And he just seemed like, I would always think like, well, I'd really like to get inside his head and see what he's working on next. So he was a very talented statistician, and it's, of course, sorely be missed. So.
Excellent.
Maybe I can say a few words.
Yes.
So, just a few words. So Cliff was a great statistician, everybody knows. My little bit of experience with him, and he had always a very positive outlook. So I had last contact with him through email. I think this was barely 1 week before his passing, and I contacted him. Hey Cliff, would you please do me a favor, review one paper for statistics in medicine? And he said, it's very great to hear from you, but I just came back from a surgery that time, and please excuse me this time, but next time you send me paper. Okay, so that was a very positive outlook for him. I'm sure that time maybe he was suffering something after coming back from the surgery. And I was in the administrative position for a short period of time. So that time I had some interaction with him. I just wrote it here. I found that he was one of the persons who voluntarily helped others, served in the committees. He was there whenever the department needed someone, whether in presenting the department at the college level. And I have experience that we are looking for someone who can go with me. I'm a small stature person, no one is going to hear me. So I was looking for someone who can talk loudly. So Cliff said, I can do that, I can go with you. So then I had a meeting with the biology department. Anyhow, so that's a long story. So the college level, talking with other departments or improving or restructuring courses. We had a lot of discussion about that in our committees. In the beginning of spring 2020, yes, so the pandemic thing had not begun that time. So it's starting to begin. So we are having a hard time finding an instructor for teaching Stat 684 in fall 2020. He readily agreed that. Once we said it, he readily agreed that. So that was the thing. And the last thing is, he was the first person who took me for lunch when I first joined here in 2004. He paid for me. That was unusual. I never saw that. I said, I'm going to pay. No, you don't have to pay. So he paid for me. So it is all nice. Other than his big stature as a statistician, he was such a nice person to work with. That is my point.
Thanks, Shamina.
This time I'm actually going to sit up to it. By the nature of my job in communications for the college, I get to talk with all of you, hopefully on some basis at some point during your careers. Cliff was an exception. All these teaching moments he had for the students, I was one of those students because he had to teach me a lot about statistics and chemistry and various things, because one of the first things we did was the JFK paper. And I learned a lot about M&Ms and I'll never look at a bag of M&Ms the same because all those little pieces in the bottom, you don't know which ones they match. So my first experience with satellite uplinks over at KAMU, that story went worldwide, and it was quite an adventure to show up there on Saturday mornings to make sure we were all on time and in the right place and telling the same right stories to each outlet. But from there, we had many more stories to tell, and it was always nice to hear that door close to the suite and hear him come down the hall and ask, "Shannon, are you in there?" And it was the best when he would sit down, start talking for just a bit, and then have to get up and shut the door, because whatever it was he was working on, he couldn't talk about just yet. And you never know, who would be lurking. In 520, there's no one there. So, but it was always so cute because he was, honor bound. He couldn't talk to anybody about this, so I'm going to tell you, but we can't talk about it. So it was before social media became a big thing, but secretly I was recording. No, just kidding. But he was always so excited about whatever he was doing, and not for the statistics, but for the people he was helping. And that was the genuine part of him. Everything was people bound, people driven. He made connections, and I don't think even I realized the extent of that until after he had passed away, and I was trying to think of people that needed to know, to be notified. It's some of the emails that I got back in response from his colleagues that I had gotten to know through various stories. He was very well respected for a lot of reasons. And the anniversary, I sent a few people a notice just to say I was thinking of them, and they're all still hurting too. So he was well liked, well respected, and well loved, and those friendships still continue. And that was probably the one saving grace of the COVID pandemic. To come back to my office and not have him come down the hall has been different. So he's missed, genuinely.
Yes.
So I didn't know Dr. Spiegelman as a statistician. I knew him as the father of a very, very dear friend, someone that I've gotten to know well over the last 7 years, I think, and come to have a lot of respect for. And there's no denying for anyone that knows Abby that she inherited her father's intelligence, his compassion, and his kindness, but also his drive and his motivation towards excellence. And hearing of the lasting legacies that Dr. Spiegelman has left in his professional field, to me, his greatest legacy are his daughters, and especially Abby, who I know is going to go on to leave just as much of a mark on the world as her dad. So.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for sharing your memories. Yes, absolutely. Abby is the main speaker.
Yes.
Yes.
As many of you know me, I'm daughter 2, but I actually go by Abby. And I cannot tell you how much we appreciate you all coming and your stories. I think it was Rabbi Peter who said that each one of us knew a different Cliff or Dr. Spiegelman, and so to hear all your stories, these are things I've never heard or never experienced, and really appreciate it. And Rabbi Peter, I think there were really only 3 statistical equations because he either ended up at Blue Baker, Schlotzsky's, or Jason Stelling. So there were really only 3.
What you guys don't know is how the M&Ms came about.
Oh no!
Which is in the 1990s when I was studying here, I measured my stress level by M&Ms. And Cliff said to me, "That is a brilliant methodology," which is how the M&Ms got on his desk. And then he used that as a way to figure out who was stressed out and who was not stressed out. When he took I would say 1 bag of M&Ms was a pretty good day, 2 bags of M&Ms, I had a bad day here. So, but Cliff turned it around, created an M&Ms theory, and that M&M theory became how we would measure student stress. So he would tell me, this student's a 3-bag person, this is a 2-bag person. And that's when you told me the story of the M&Ms, I remember how Cliff and I chatted about M&Ms as a stress reliever for statistics. So I'm glad to fill in a little bit of the lacuna.
There you go. Now we know. But so he's highly respected, phenomenal statistician, but and I apologize for the 4 of you who have already heard this, but he was also a lover of horrible jokes. And so one of my favorite memories is he's working on that new undergraduate course, and he was not pacing, but walking from the office to his bedroom back and forth. He was trying to think of something to get the students interested, because as an undergrad, I mean, sorry, but who really wants to take an intro statistics class? So he loved Broadway musicals, especially Addams Family, and so he was thinking about forensic statistics, and he decided, instead of saying around the corner, one of the jokes in Addams Family was around the coroner. And so he included that as his joke at the end of the presentation, and I could hear him chuckling to himself in his office as he was practicing it. Every time he got to the end, he'd say, "I'll see you around the corner," and he started laughing. So that's one of my favorite stories with my dad, because just the worst jokes. So thank you all.
Thank you, Abby.
I just want to add one thing. Cliff and I published a paper together, so that really means something, means a lot to me.
Well, if no more memories or stories, I'm inviting you to help yourself and maybe talk to each other about Cliff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
everybody.
everything.
Thank you.